Hi, Vince. Welcome to the show. It is really such an honor to have you. I'm so happy that you are here.
Hi, Vanessa. Pleasure to be here, and looking forward to dropping some knowledge bombs for. I think people are going to really enjoy. If you're just tuning in, strap in. I think you're going to get a lot of information that you haven't heard before.
Oh, I think that's an understatement. Yes, I am so anticipatory of this conversation. You have no idea. Well, you do have an idea because we talked a little
I'm
bit about
glad.
this.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think that this is a really this is a conversation that I think a lot of people need to hear. And I know that you have so much experience under your belt, as we've sort of discussed. And I feel like there are things that I've learned from you, which is part of the reason why I was so excited to get you on here and to do this episode. So I think for the audience, let's first set a little foundational stage for them. What are you doing? How did you get here?
yeah.
What brought you to this space and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, so let me pre-qualify a little bit for those that don't know. I'm Vince Pitzik, and I'm the founder of one of the largest like nutrition functional medicine companies in the country that is heavy working with both medicine and nutrition and coaching to get incredible outcomes, right? For whether it's aesthetics or for disease. But before that, basically like a top just performance coach. And then health coach, but I was also, 5 years, I was the functional consultant behind some of the biggest doctors in the country. So I was the one, making the protocols, helping set up practices. So you name it, I've seen every treatment, every protocol. I've sat in on the cases. So my experience in the range of everything functional health, male or female, I've got experience in everything. And then went and launched my own system that now we have in 2,000 practices, coaching and medical practices across the country, right? And it helps millions of people every year. And the only reason I say all that is so that people understand that, because a lot of people who are going to listen to this don't fall into the normal research. That they can't just read research and like follow what the research says, and then it all works out for them. They're not represented appropriately. So they're always looking for information to try to help themselves. And we have the most experience, meaning the most like wisdom, because we see so many numbers that we know. And I have my own research team and my own top dietitians and doctors where we're always testing new protocols and procedures of the future, different nutrition, different peptides, different hormones, different supplements. So our, what we call clinical evidence is the highest. So when it comes to specific questions about why is my metabolism slow, or why is this happening, or why am I not getting the response that I'm supposed to be getting, we can answer those questions, I think, on a deeper level than probably anyone else can. So that's why people listening, I think you're going to get information that's very accurate to you specifically that's listening or watching this.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful.
So that
Wonderful.
helps pre-qualify a little bit, like why is this going to be different than any other information that I hear, you
Yeah,
know?
no, I think
Yeah.
it's important that you state that because I do think that just the level of experience and the people that are working with your programs and people who are helping patients and clients and so forth. I mean, it really is a different sort of a setup, and I
Yeah.
think that it's important that people understand just how much has gone into this.
Yeah.
And I love that you said the word wisdom. You said the word wisdom earlier, and I think that there's so much to be said about knowledge versus wisdom. And when you have wisdom, it's because there's experience that leads you to that
Yeah.
place, and so you certainly have that. I
Well,
feel
going
like
back to people, I think people should know that most research, or like anything that we know that is second nature today, that's like obvious to people today, it started theoretical because somebody got a lot of clinical evidence, meaning that they watched the behavior of the human body. That's all fitness is based on. It wasn't research. It was clinical evidence that they went and reverse engineered why it worked in a laboratory setting, right?
Mm, mm.
Functional medicine is all that way too. And so whatever isn't extensively studied, you have to go off clinical evidence. That's why you need a little bit of both. If you just follow research for yourself, you're going to be wrong 60% of the time, because
Yes.
bioindividuality is real. Everyone's a little bit different. And so if you don't understand how the body behaves, then you don't know what to do for you specifically, right? So that's, That's what we spend a lot of time on. We focus on genetic testing. We focus on Dutch testing. We focus on, GI testing. So we understand people's bio-individuality and why a workout stimulus or a supplement or a diet plan or whatever, or functional medicine therapy, why it works different in them than it does in other people. And then how do we create a process for you to get the outcome that you desire? So I think that should fundamentally help people understand the
Yeah.
difference.
Well said. Well said and important. My friends, I think that you are going to be taking some, or I should say, my suggestion is that you get out a pen and paper if you're not driving and you take some notes, because I think that this episode is going to be something that you might even want to even play back or write things down. I think we're just gonna have a lot here for you. Vince is going to drive a lot of points home that I think maybe you've never heard before. So buckle up. Here we go. So by the time this airs, like you and I were talking about, we're going to be into 2025. And people are going to do the thing that they always do, which is they're going to set their goals, their aspirations, all the things that they do at the start of the year. And a lot of that has to do with weight loss. And unfortunately, what most people see is that they drop off or they get frustrated or they're not seeing results. And first, I just want to kind of start here because this is really all about metabolism. We are going to be talking a lot about, weight, both with men and women, and I think maybe a little bit more with women. But I want to start with the question, why do you think, and I know it's a big one and we can go into a million different branches, but why do you think people are having such a hard time losing weight today? Why are we hearing things like my metabolism is slowing down early? Maybe it's just my age. It's just kind of what's happening these days. My friends are suffering from the same thing. What is going on with people's metabolic rate and why are people having a hard time?
Well, one of the things that by the time this airs, about 88% of people will have already quit their New Year's resolution. Okay. And so that's part of the problem right there. So diet culture doesn't really enter the scene until about 1935. There have been nutrition books made all the way back in the 1700s, believe it or not. One of the earliest dating books I think got back to is 1760, and it was actually looking at Mediterranean foods. But people didn't diet as a behavior. It wasn't. We didn't think that way. I don't know if people can imagine a world where we didn't think about controlling our calories today, but it just didn't exist. In fact, if we look at the 1939 almanac, like Farmer's Almanac, and we look at behaviors, we actually ate all the same amount of calories then, most the same amount of carbs, but yeah, we didn't have the biomass, the fat accumulation. We didn't have the we didn't have the rates of obesity. I mean, we didn't have any of these things that we had in 1939. Everybody wants to tell you that we're eating more calories, and we're not really eating more calories. We are walking less. That's a big player, right? So what could be the difference in our metabolic rate from, let's say, 1939 to today? Well, part of it is diet culture. So what we see is in countries that have more of an emphasis in diet culture have a bigger problem with weight management. So like if you look at the spending on products, programs, all of those things in the United States per capita, we are number one, yet we have one of the largest first world problems in weight, obesity, and biomass. So you can't ignore that. I'm not saying it's causal, but it is certainly relational. So just like the New Year's resolution, the average woman, which is probably the type of person that's probably watching this podcast, although men, we can talk about you as well, but the average woman by the age of 13 will start to diet at least twice a year until she's about 62 years old, typically, okay? Right? So think about the number of rounds that would be on your body. It could be anything as short as 6 to 8 weeks, or it could be a prolonged period of time, maybe over 16, 20 weeks. And she'll do it by way of not eating. And then when she comes out of it, she won't go back up in her calories appropriately. What she'll do is this thing where she'll undereat, then overeat, then undereat, then overeat, then undereat, then overeat, okay? And that behavior leads to something called metabolic adaptation, or we call the actual term in science is called adaptive thermogenesis. And so what happens is that, so when you crash diet and then you just rebound out, you end up eating more muscle, eating more fat, and you become desensitized to metabolism hormones. So when we talk about metabolism, a lot of times people don't know what that really kind of means. Like point to where your metabolism is. It's happening everywhere in your body, but but it's basically the amount of energy burn, right, that your body needs to sustain total cellular processes. However, I want people to think of it in terms of metabolic capacity. I want to introduce a different word. Metabolic capacity basically is the net total of metabolism that occurs inside my body of processing everything, hormones, toxins, liver function, everything. And people's metabolic capacity, right, when you're chronically dieting gets reduced. So think of it like in terms of physics, like potential energy. Your metabolism has a metabolic potential, and then it has a metabolic actual, because your capacity, even though you have room for more, can get reduced. And it's called adaptive thermogenesis, right? And so your body gets used to your BS, basically, right? And it's concerned with survival, not you looking good in a bikini or it doing what you want. And so what happens is that people typically, so what if I told you, the average person listening to this right now, what if I told you that whatever calories that you could potentially consume right now, what if I told you that with a couple of stimulation tricks that we have, what if I could get you to eat 300 to 400 more calories without gaining weight? What do you think that could do for you long term? Like the holiday, having more accident forgiveness, having what I call an all state metabolism, right? And being able to, what would that do in terms of, it would make weight loss easier and it would make weight gain harder, right? And that's important. And we lose that accident forgiveness by the way diet culture and the way that we diet. So coming back to like New Year's, right, resolutions and all of these things, is that what women typically do, and men diet a lot, but let's talk more about women, probably primarily listening and watching this podcast. The average woman will try to lose weight 2 times a year, starting at about 13. It gets a little earlier every year, all the way up. It gets a little later every year too, all the way up to anywhere between like 57 and 62. And she will do it by way of basically not eating any food and overstressing her body with activity, and then immediately going into way too much food, and then going back to like less food. If there's someone that typically diets, there are people who never diet, okay? And those people sit on the couch and they eat food and they're understressed. But I'm talking about the population of people that are underfed and overstressed. So what'll happen earlier in life is they're doing this behavior, and then they start to get to a place where they're actually generally restricting kind of all the time. And then they'll just go lower when they want to lose. And then they'll rebound up a little bit, and then they'll go lower again. And from that process, your metabolic capacity, potential capacity, begins to go into what we call metabolic actual. And that's why you can meet a lot of women who might be 5'6", 170. And if you ran a BMR calculator on them, it would say something around the lines of 1,700 calories if you add a multiplier activity of 1.2 or something like that. But in actuality, okay, even if they cut their calories 500, they don't lose. And so they would have to go further than that because their potential is not the actual. Their actual is reduced because of adaptive thermogenesis, which is really, again, hard to calculate on a calculator. It's even hard to be able to tell in a VO2 or the Noom. You can blow into a little thing. They still don't really have it down. I don't care what anybody tells you. And so those are nice markers. But what's happened is that fundamentally 3 things have happened if your metabolism reduces like that. One, the number of calories that your body it takes to run cellular functions, so your basal metabolic rate, it will slow down by just a few percent. And it's not something that you would pick up in a 12-week research. It's something that happens over years, right? So that's why you're not going to find it in one piece of research, although they have started to identify this. I'm actually working with Bill Campbell, who's like one of the lead metabolic researcher out of USF, and we're going to prove that this is happening in a deeper level and help women in particularly certain underrepresented classes like menopause and show how this is happening. But just to give people a little bit more of an understanding is what really happens is that your body will slow your liver down 2%, your kidney down 2%, everything slows down just a little bit. And so now every day I'm burning 36 less calories, 59, 102, 120, 200, 220. Now all of a sudden, remember, all you need is 9 excess calories to make 1 gram of fat. Now, 1 gram isn't going to do much, but remember every day that your metabolic capacity goes down. And that's why you can think, I'm fine, and then wake up and look in the mirror and go, oh shit, I'm fat.
Yeah.
Because
and that happens a lot to people because they don't see it. And then one day they just see it and they're like, how did I get here?
Yeah. Yeah. And part of the reason that's why that is because once they start the behavior change. So let's say, I don't know, I change my birth control, or I'm in a tougher relationship, or I go into a work season. Your body has a bit of a delay where it'll put up with something. So like maybe my calories went up a little bit or whatever, but then my body will stress adapt. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't doing anything before. So I wasn't picking up on, my body used to do it. So I'm not thinking any different. And my weight might be changing, but maybe my clothes were just loose enough that I didn't feel it until it got to a place where I'm really picking everything up. And that's what happens to people. It tricks you, and then it's all you can focus on, right? Yeah, and then now you're like, oh my God, I got to be ready for this wedding. And so you do the whole diet culture thing all over again. And it's this never ending cycle, right? Yeah. Of perpetual beating on your body in a way that makes it maladapt to you and what you do to it. Like, for example, Vanessa, I think we all can understand this. If you do the same workout today and you're still doing it in 2034, not only is that workout not going to progress you anymore, it's actually going to make you worse. Ask any endurance runner, okay, that exists, that if they keep the same 20 miles every day, at some point, their miles are going to slow down. They're actually going to be worse at doing the thing because there was no variation to it. And so dieting practices are very much the same way, but also nervous system practices. So like, meaning that like, if my nervous system stays in sympathetic all the time, then any sympathetic stimulus will not have the same positive effect, like working out or challenging yourself at the job or whatever. It becomes what we call a maladaptation. So you start going the other way. And when a body starts to maladapt to a stress environment, it's because you haven't taken breaks like a professional athlete. An athlete knows this, and why everyone doesn't realize that if you're doing something all the time, you're trying to go pro at it. But if I'm working all the time, if I'm go all the time, you're trying to go pro, because that's what a pro would do. And a pro knows one very important thing if they're going to have any form of longevity, and that is I must have off seasons to have better on seasons, right? So that means that if your nervous system is on 10 all the time and you keep beating on it to give you more, at some point it's going to give you less, and you're going to be pretty pissed about that because you're like, why? I'm doing so much more. Why am I not getting what I'm supposed to be getting? And that happens, and it's understandable, but it's unwise. It's unwise. More doesn't equal more. I think it's Cat Williams. It's like 1 Tylenol is great. 16 should be amazing, but it'll be your last headache. I think it was Kevin Hart, one of the two. I can't remember. But I love the wisdom there. Yeah. So like where I'm going with this is that because women diet the way that they do, and then they take stimulants and they're stressed out all the time, what ends up happening is that, and it's not when men are stressed out all the time, but they happen to have a muscle that will hold it a little bit better. Their systems are run a little differently in terms of like hormone balance and how we balance things out. And so because women are more hormonally complex, this is why it shows up in their actual metabolic capacity much earlier in life. Men just tend to lean into comfort and overconsume food, which would be much easier if women just did that, because then all they would have to do is reduce their calories, and yeah, they would lose weight. So the eat less, move more would totally be accurate if that's what women were doing.
Yeah.
But the ones that are listening to this podcast are not doing that. Okay. And so just to finish this part of this out, and we'll get on to the next thing. But what happens is my body starts slowing down liver function, ovarian function. So that's why I produce less hormones. I'm not detoxifying as well. My digestion, my motility is a little bit slower. My brain's a little bit slower. Everything kind of just slows down a little bit. And then it also turns down 3 interesting features in something called NREE, non-resting energy expenditure. So you'll stop fidgeting. You'll fidget a little bit less to burn less calories. You may think you're fidgeting more, but you're fidgeting less, or moving around. Like your desire to get up and move gets a little bit less. 2, okay, your thermogenic effect of food. So when I eat food, I should flame on like a furnace, and I won't. It will. That's why women start getting lower blood pressure. They tend to have slower, their blood flow, right, tends to get a little bit more constricted, right? They also don't, when they sleep at night, don't heat up. They're always cold, right? Because the food isn't flaming them on. Okay, right? Like I know when I train and I eat carbs, if I'm training, I could sweat the bed out if I'm not careful. Right. So that's thermogenic effect of food. And then you've got the last one that's important, which is exercise activity thermogenesis. Right. And so what that basically means in eat is how many calories do I burn per unit of movement? And if you go by what the treadmill tells you, you are very wrong. It is a lie. Okay. And so it will turn that down dramatically. Like when you were 17 years old and you got high on, or you're 13 maybe, and you got high on a bunch of pixie sticks. And then when you went out and ran, I can promise you that your body upregulated its metabolism to burn more calories per unit of movement than it absolutely does now when you eat those pixie sticks. Okay. Yeah. So that's called accident forgiveness. And that's a governor that the body has to get rid of calories quickly, because the slower we metabolize and process calories, the more net oxidative stress in the food processing we create. And that's what creates disease over time, which is why everyone listening to this, as your metabolism slows down, you are getting sicker. You don't know it, maybe you don't feel it, but on the inside, because you're not processing, your metabolic capacity is slowed down. That means the speed to me swallowing food and it getting into my mitochondria is now 10, 20, 30% slower, which means that food not being where it's supposed to be is creating 10, 20, 30% more oxidative stress. That begins to damage cells, manipulate hormones, mess with digestion, irritate the immune system, and inflammation begins to slowly rise. And we can watch that happen through watching 2-hour postprandial glucose levels in women. And they start in the 70s when you are like 13, 15 years old. And then they begin to creep on up into the 80s and the early 20s, mid, high 80s, later 20s. Now I'm mid to high to 100 sugars in my 30s. And no one says anything because it's not till 120 you're a diabetic or whatever. So then no one says anything. But that is metabolic efficiency revealing that you have reduced metabolic capacity. So I hope people really followed that, because I just explained it about as
clear as day.
Explain something complicated.
Yeah. And I have so
our
many
dieting methods are messing us up, is what I'm saying.
Yes. And oh my goodness, I have so many thoughts, but that was beautifully explained. And I think that one of the things that I was going to ask you, but you already cleared it up, was why is it, and I hate to use the word danger because I don't like to scare people, and I'm not here sitting in I don't want people to be fearful, but it is quote unquote dangerous to see the metabolic rate really slowing down, because then it's like the cornerstone of everything. And then when you don't have that rate optimal, then you are going to see disease, or you're going to see something adapt. And I don't like to say the body's breaking down. It's just adapting to the environment that you're giving it, So I think that it's important that, that we sort of like tack that up on the wall and really look at it, because our metabolic rate is so important when it comes to fighting off or staying away from, I should say, disease.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
other thing that I was thinking about, well, first of all, we're a lot of it is diet culture and chronic dieting. What would you say to the person who's listening, or the woman who's listening, who says, well, you know what, that really hasn't been my situation. Like, I haven't really dieted, and I feel like I eat really well, and I eat all the protein, and I do all the things, and I'm really clean, and I drink all the filtered water, and I work out, but I still can't lose weight. And I don't,
Yeah.
and I'm 40, or I'm 45, or I'm 35, or I'm 55. Like, what is that about?
So people forget that in the beginning, people have selective memory because when they were younger, they absolutely did what I'm talking about. And they're like, maybe they're not doing it now, but they were doing it then. And one of the other things to remember is that, so there's other things happening. The other one is the loss of muscle. So most medications, most stimulants, we're not eating enough calories. There's a big difference to eat enough calories to build muscle or hold muscle, and enough calories to make fat. Because the reality is, I can lower my calories, but if I'm not active in the right ways, I can actually lose my muscle and then start storing fat, even if my calories are technically below maintenance or at maintenance, because your metabolism is a dynamic thing. So if my capacity reduces, the normal calories that I would eat may not be enough calories to build muscle, but they will be enough calories to make fat. And it's understand that those numbers are not the same. And that's really hard for people to understand sometimes. But I think what I'm saying is the research is pretty clear that you need to train. Walking holds muscle, but you really need some form of hypertrophy or at least functional sport activity multiple times a week in order to hold muscle. But to build muscle, which no one ever really goes through a build. They don't spend enough time in what would take to build, since you've been chronically dieting and you didn't know you were losing muscle. People don't know what it actually takes to go through a season of build to actually put on sustainable muscle. And so they have to stay active, or if they're not going to raise their calories and they're not going to work out 4 times a week or something like that, then you have to stay consistent at 3 times a week for a very, 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 very long time for it to slowly create the pro-adaptions to get you the amount of muscle required to maintain a healthy metabolic rate into the future. So your capacity is reduced, you've lost a little bit of muscle, and then the final part is inflammation, oxidative stress that leads to damaged cells that do not process glucose and hormone insensitivity. So as I said before, one of the reasons that people are loving these GLP peptides, which we'll talk about, is because the microbiome gets off, so you don't release the peptides that stimulate insulin, which help clear glucose from the body and help your body process, but also leptin. So insulin and leptin are key hormones that no one ever talks about. That leptin is really the main hormone that tells you to turn on fat metabolism. Now, you can still have lipolysis without leptin, but it's what drives it significantly, okay? So oxidative stress due to smoking, stress, lack of sleep, toxicity exposure, heavy metal exposure, it's all the things, aging, right? Slowing metabolism, so then oxidative stress goes up, so it increases your cellular age. It begins to damage cells in your body. And these cells then don't process glucose as well. And they're not hormone sensitive, so they're not hearing leptin and insulin. So you're not insulin sensitive and you're not leptin sensitive. And I can tell you that it matters because, like, for example, people say hormones don't matter. I'll prove it that they do. When I was a functional medicine consultant, I oversaw many type 1 diabetic clinics. And type 1 diabetes is a really interesting thing because If hormones aren't right, like insulin, then you can eat 5 to 6,000 calories and not gain a pound. And you're going to lose a bunch of weight because you're not actually taking any of those. They're literally pooping the calories out.
Mm. Wow.
They're going out their colon. Okay. And so you learn really quick how much hormones actually have an effect on your metabolic capacity. It also has an effect on what energy source you burn for fuel. Do I burn my fat and carbs, or am I going to burn my protein as a fuel source? Right? Your hormones have a big player in that. That's why a lot of people go, well, I'm eating my protein. Well, your body's probably converting it into sugar and it's not building your muscle.
Mm.
That happens when we get inflamed and we're not optimal, right? And we're not sensitive to our hormones. And so that's why I'm such a big proponent of functional health coaching, because we can reset the entire system. We can give you back that 300-400 calories of metabolic capacity, and we can ensure that you've got everything in place to make sure you're building muscle and burning fat. So that way, when you move on to the future, you don't keep perpetuating a bad ideal. And most of the things that we've been doing to our body for so long, we're adapted to, and they're just making us worse and not better. So you have to change up what you're doing in order to really get sustainable long-term results.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I knew you were going to bring up hormones and leptin and insulin and all of that. And I kind of have to, I have to wonder how many people have even heard of leptin. I don't think it's discussed enough. And I feel like people don't really even understand what it does or what it means.
I think just to give people, can we maybe give them a little bit of how, like it real quick, and what the mechanism is?
Can you? Yeah, please.
So
I think it would be very
everyone wants
helpful.
to blame insulin as the bad guy.
Yeah.
Do not be fooled. Insulin is not a bad guy. Insulin is the key shuttler of nutrients in your body. So without insulin, you cannot shuttle nutrients into the cell. Okay. That's why you'll see a type 1 diabetic get malnourished, mineral deficient, like nothing's going in, everything's going out. Now, if you are someone who understresses your body and overconsumes, right, then insulin can become an enemy because it can get high. All right. But insulin can become an enemy if it gets too low. But I would like to introduce a term for everybody that I think is important, because we tend to think of hormones in terms of high or low. And what is a hormone? It's a messenger. So like right now, I'm giving you a message. My voice is a messenger. But if you were to cut off your ears and to plug them with cotton, it doesn't matter how loud I am or how loud I am.
Yeah.
You can't hear me. And those are called receptor sites, right, on cells. So I want people to know, let me give you a perfect example of this. Caffeine, coffee, right? I have my first coffee, feeling good. Yeah, it's good, right? And cortisol is responding to it, going up a little bit, okay? It's starting to come down, right? And so, there's combinations of reasons why your brain begins to release the antidote to it and like make you tired. So then you have another coffee, right? Ooh, I'm feeling good. I'm up. Then I want to keep this going. So I go into my third coffee, or I go into my fourth coffee. By the third and a half, fourth coffee, and if I've been doing it for enough days, it actually starts to make me tired, because what stimulates you will eventually suppress you, okay? And the reason that is true is because your cortisol is still high or stimulated when you're drinking the caffeine. It's that your receptor sites are full and they're now blocking the cortisol hormone. So I've plugged my ears so I don't hear you, which maybe many of you women want to do for your significant others over the holiday so that you do not hear them. Or you women have this amazing feature that is built in earplugs called selective hearing, right?
I can't. Are you sure it's just women? It's not men too?
I'm just having fun. I'm having a little fun. I'm not
That's
sexist,
hilarious.
I swear. Men do it all the time.
I think that's hilarious. I think it's all. I think it's all of us. I think it's all of us. I mean, come on.
But it's true. Yes.
Who doesn't have selective hearing?
It is all of us, but it is having a little fun here coming up on the holiday season.
That's hilarious.
But you're exactly right. So your cells can do the same thing. Okay. And so it's not that your hormone's low. It's that there's so much oxidative stress in your body from too much of a hormone that it can't hear it. And when it can't hear it, it feels like, think of the difference between free testosterone and bound. You cannot feel bound testosterone. You can only feel free testosterone, right? Very somewhat similar in that way,
Yeah.
because that's what's available to attach to the cell and be used.
Right.
And so that's why it's more important to be sensitive than it is to have a certain level of hormone, right? That's why when we just play the game of level for thyroid, it's like, oh, I look low. I need to take more to get right in the middle. Well, that's true, but if you're not sensitive, it doesn't really matter. You're still not going to feel good over time. And so, so sensitivity. So leptin, okay? So when I eat food, my body then immediately, you've got oral lipase, which is pancreatic enzyme that starts to break down a little bit of the food. And then immediately that makes your body kind of start releasing just a little bit of insulin to kind of prepare for what's coming. If you're sensitive, by the way, if you're not, it's not going to do that. But then as soon as the betaine hydrochloride, which is in your, basically comes stomach acid, starts breaking down the food, it then goes into the duodenum, and the acid actually goes in with the food, and the acid triggers the liver and the pancreas, which is important to know, because that's why if you have low stomach acids, it can have an effect on the rest of the digestive process, because it's not triggering the release of bile and pancreatic enzymes. And so once the liver is slightly, the insulin slightly stimulate, or the pancreas is stimulated, because it serves both a digestive function and a hormone function, is that it begins to release insulin from the beta cells. Now, the insulin will grab the glucose, basically at the receptor site, GLUT4 or GLUT2 receptor site. And then this insulin transport vesicle will go to the surface, grab the glucose, because insulin is the key. So the key opens the door, then the glucose gets grabbed, and then it gets pulled into the mitochondria, right? Well, as soon as that happens in a fat cell, the first thing a fat cell does is release the call for leptin. And so leptin then pulls your hunger hormone down a little bit. So that's why chronic dieting can also make you either chronically hungry or never hungry, because of leptin sensitivity. So people that are never hungry, they're probably a little leptin insensitive. So that means they're not tapping into fat metabolism as much. So that's part of the problem. People who are always hungry, also problematic with leptin. Leptin and ghrelin, right? Ghrelin's the hunger hormone, but what happens is then leptin stimulates lipolysis. So it tells your body to start burning fatty acids. So in your bloodstream, along with glucose, you've got something called glycerol. It's like a tertiary energy source in the bloodstream. You know, you've got glucose, then you've got your glycogen in your muscle and in your liver, and then you've got glycerol. And glycerol floats around and attaches to fatty acids, fats, and it creates a triglyceride, right? And so what happens is that your body goes, hey, start burning some fat. So even when I'm eating carbs, in a couple minutes, I should start burning fat. Okay? So that leptin is what stimulates that, right? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It makes sense.
But if that's not happening, then I'm just running on the glucose, and I don't start, and then I keep running on sugar. Well, what happens if I keep running on sugar? Well, one, my body's going to slow my metabolism down if it's not got enough immediate energy. But two, it's going to start doing what? It's going to break down protein in the liver, convert it into sugar through neoglucogenesis, and start feeding on that, and leave your fat stores right where they are.
Yeah.
So see, what has to do with that is your hormones, not your metabolic rate, right? And so that's why leptin and insulin sensitivity is so important. And without insulin, you don't have leptin. And that's why people who go low carb for too long stop burning fat.
Okay, let's touch on that for a second, because I think there's a lot of confusion here, because I see that a lot of people who go low carb for a long time, or carnivore even, after some period of time, or a year or 2 years or whatever, they stop seeing the weight loss that they prefer.
Yes. Well, because one, you need diet variation, just like a workout. So remember what I talk, adaptive thermogenesis. So your body will adapt. So that's one. So it reduces your metabolic capacity. So your metabolic total net processing power turns down, the amount that you use. That's the first thing that happens when you stay on something too long without variation, like weekend carb refeeds, which is why refeeds are so important, people.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And if you don't take them, your body will adapt. So shame on you. But the other thing that happens is your insulin gets too low. So then your leptin gets low.
Oh, okay.
So you're just going to keep burning. So your body's just going to keep working on burning protein. So then what happens is you could keep losing weight maybe, but what your body will do will eat your muscle to repair your muscle.
Oh, wow.
Because and skip the fat altogether.
Right. That makes total sense.
So the just because the diet worked for a little while doesn't mean it's going to keep working. I just told you more isn't better. That's why I love carnivore. I love keto. I love, low calorie dieting when necessary. But if you don't vary it, right? So get higher calories on certain days. That'll stimulate leptin. What it'll also do, and what people refuse to understand, and I drives me nuts. Insulin is what gets cortisol down. So in women, if you are in a toxic relationship, you're going to want to record this real quick. I'm putting this up here. So if you are in a toxic relationship or if you are in a toxic work environment, right? If you are in a toxic work environment or you are really stressed out and you are training all the time, okay? And you are low carbing it. The two things in women that combat cortisol are melatonin. So if I'm overtraining all the time, my melatonin is not going to fire. Another one that bats three things. The other thing is oxytocin. So if I'm not getting love, if I'm not in my feminine, if I'm not hugging fur babies or feeling intimate or connected with anybody because I'm really stressed out, then I've got no oxytocin to combat cortisol. And then if I'm not eating carbs, because insulin stimulated from the carbs combats cortisol. So you got three things working against you, which is why your body stalls. Melatonin, right? Oxytocin, and insulin. They actually become a woman's best friend in order to continue to maintain our metabolism. And the irony is we don't value them enough. So then we wonder why our metabolism stops working. It was working before. Why doesn't it work now? Because it doesn't work that way. Tell me anything in your life that you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and keep getting a good result. Never.
Nothing.
So why do you expect it from your body now in this program?
Can I make a point real quick too about this? Because this is a really important part of the conversation, I think. That was fantastic. That was so fantastic. I love that you went down that road. I want to make a point that this is not just about people who, like, someone might be sitting here thinking, oh, well, that can't be me because I'm not overweight. Like I don't have, you can have this problem and be skinny. You can have this problem and be underweight. And I think and I realize that this is more of a, like, we're talking about weight loss. We will be getting into GLP-1s and stuff like that, but just a little note, because I actually have seen myself there and I'm trying to build myself out of that because of circumstances that I was in, being underweight and still having, and that's a metabolic issue also. And the accumulation of stress and all of that. So I feel like that is an important part to touch on in case someone's listening and they're going, well, it probably doesn't apply. Like, yeah, I'm kind of stressed, but I'm really like pretty thin. So this doesn't apply to me.
Yeah,
that's
but they're losing their muscle and they're turning skinny fat.
Exactly. And it's interesting, just, off the cuff, I'll share that I am very small frame. I'm like 5'8" and I'm already small. I've been small my whole life, but I've definitely gone on and off. Well, I have been in a recovery situation for a long time now because of something that transpired with I'll just call it an injury for lack of better terminology. Okay. Story for another day. Can
I just say, everybody, by the way, I'm having fun with this. And I know that if this is traumatic, if you guys went through something traumatic and that's how you got here, just know that I completely empathize, but the Goggins is coming out in me to try to get you to do better. But do not misunderstand me that while I'm having fun for this holiday kind of podcast, I really do empathize with how people got here.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think it's important that I recognize you, that your emotions and your feelings for why this happened are valid. It's probably not even entirely your fault of how you got here. Unfortunately, it is your responsibility because it is your house. And so I would like to say that because I did realize that maybe in hindsight, I was playing into the like whining person. And I don't want people to feel that way because you are validated for how you got here. But it does speak to the other person in you to try to challenge you to get out of this space, you know? So
Yeah.
I always battle my David Goggins voice versus my Joe Dispenza voice, you know? And the back and forth that occurs from that. But yeah, anyway,
You know, I
I
just
think it was important for your listeners. I do. It was sounded condescending, and I'm just having fun.
no, I actually honestly from a host standpoint, I didn't find that at all. I didn't feel
Okay,
like that
great,
at all. Yeah. But
great. Yeah,
I appreciate that and the empathy behind it is genuine.
yeah,
Um yeah, so I've seen, I think is my point. I've seen a loss of, you know, already being someone who's thin and then seeing a loss of muscle. And then I was just talking about this with my Instagram friends this week, is that I am currently trying to be really calculated about my caloric intake right now because I just went through a massive bout of demonic food poisoning and lost even more weight because introducing foods back in has taken me some time. And I could even see, as small as I am already, I could even see the breakdown of my muscle within 9 days.
yeah.
9 days, and my clothes are fitting differently, and my, you know, and people might think, oh, well, that's not a bad problem to have. Oh no, that's actually a problem to
It's a problem.
have. It's a problem to have. And so I think it was important for me to sort of throw this in, that if you're listening and maybe you're, you know, you're just having fun listening to it, or you're listening for a friend or a family member or whatever, or it's just, and it doesn't relate to you on the weight loss level, that doesn't mean that this is not important information for you to be listening to also.
I think it's really important for anybody to understand that if you're having metabolic issues, noticing that you're having muscle loss, or that you can't lose weight at any weight, that is a sign of the beginning of metabolic dysfunction, and it should be taken seriously. And I think what happens is because of fit shaming, people think because it's like, oh, they're of weight, what do they have to worry about? Then people go unnoticed to these certain problems that turn into other health issues very, very quickly. Because if you can't lose weight, it's a metabolic process inside of your body that is shut down, that you're not metabolizing fat. It means you're not metabolizing oxidative stress very well. And then it's beginning to build up. And I guarantee you within 6 months, year and a half, 2 years, you're going to have a disease on your doorstep because you didn't appropriately address it. And because doctors and people do not recognize it because they're comparing you to, you know, BMI charts
Yeah.
that don't adequately reflect your current status. We fall short to recognize conditions before they fully manifest into something that's an adult and real, when we could have easily gotten rid of it preventatively sooner.
Yeah, really well said. So I think what everyone is probably wondering or asking at this point, before we jump into, you know, the Ozempics and the Wegovy and all that, is how do we, how do we get to, or how, you know, someone's sitting here going, okay, cool, this sounds great, but like, how do we get to a place where our body is, what sounds like you're saying is, how do we get to a place where our body is operating in a way that's resilient and can operate in a high caloric environment? Or maybe there's an issue where, you know, maybe you're not eating as many calories and still have that adaptability and that resiliency. Like, how do we get there?
So the there is the fast way, which is working with one of our specialists that can get this done really quickly for you. But then there's like, what are tools for anybody out there that can help? And the first thing is, okay, and this, I think this is probably one of the best things that people can do, is that when you go to lose weight, after you're done losing weight, the post diet is the most important. Okay. So your body's going to be adapted to really low calories. So if you jump your calories up really fast, your metabolism's not going to be acclimated for that. And it's going to put on all fat. And that's going to make you less hormone sensitive. When you gain fat really quickly, even if it's a couple pounds, your leptin doesn't have time to adjust, because leptin should go up with fat metabolism. So if I've got a bunch of fat and lower leptin, that means I have insensitivity. Okay. It's not equal to where it should be based on my fat status. So you have to walk yourself out, higher protein, make sure you intentionally train, and then commit yourself to slowly introducing like 100 calories a week or something like that, to get yourself back up to a maintenance. But then continue to stay at maintenance or intentionally go a little bit above that and stay there for like 8 to 12 weeks, because then that will set your metabolism at that caloric intake, so that anytime later you want to go back into a cut, you could cut your calories quickly, get the weight off, and then go back up. I believe, just for everyone to know, I believe that the problem is long-term low calorie dieting with high amounts of training, because especially if your hormones aren't right to maintain your muscle mass, because I think it creates adaptation. I would rather people listening make sure that majority of the year they eat more calories. And then the data is starting to show that if you do really aggressive dieting for shorter duration, but keep resistance training in, like Bill Campbell's about to release some research that shows people get down to 1,000 calories, majority of it protein, train 3-4 days a week, you lose majority of fat, hold your muscle, and then get out of there relatively quickly. Maybe you stay down there 14 days, come back out for a couple of days, do it again. That's actually going to prevent metabolic adaptation. So your adaptive thermogenesis won't be as bad. You'll maintain muscle, and then you go back up to a calories that you want your body's metabolism to typically run at, because your metabolism is what you feed it. So if your calories have never gone up for a sustained period of time because you're too worried about being in a bathing suit 24/7 or whatever your issue is, or you're trying to hold on to a certain look 24/7, that's going to be the grave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that requires coaching, because you're emotionally to do that on your own may be very challenging.
Yes. Good point. Good point. Because I think a lot of people, or at least I would assume, I'm not in this position, but I would assume that most people, or women in particular, for the sake of this particular, or this part of the conversation, are thinking, how this sounds great theoretically, but like every time I try to fire up my metabolism, I gain. And so it does, like, this sounds great, but like I've tried this before, but I feel like there is missing pieces here for
That's
people.
because they're already, this is what I'm telling you. They've already been doing this for 20
Yeah.
years. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to go
Yeah.
well at first.
Yeah.
That's why, I'll be honest with you, this is why I like some GLP-1s. Not for, no, but wait, not, I don't like GLP-1s for cutting calories. I like GLP-1s for building muscle, because these people are insulin insensitive. So they're not going to use carbohydrates and calories very efficiently. So if you can stimulate insulin with semaglutide a little bit and clean up the glucose, and you can start getting active, you can build muscle cleaner. We've been seeing that. So, but again, not using too much to not shut your hunger off, right? This is why majority of people just need to work with a coach for at least 3-6 months, get your metabolism reset, and start fresh. Stop trying to do it on your own, doing these New Year's resolutions, trying to cut your calories on your own 2 times a year, every single year from 13 to 62 years old, and then wondering why, because you won't invest in yourself for 5 minutes. That's why our organizations are doing so well, because the public is beginning to realize, I need help getting back on track. By the time I know it's a problem, I've been doing it for 20 years. So it's not like it's going to fix itself very quickly on its own. And I know it'd be really nice, because I know people have varying degrees of financial affordability, but there are coaches at all kinds of different monthly rates that you could afford if you cut out the Starbucks. If you got a little more efficient, everyone has the money. Everyone has the money, right? And then you can get it right.
It's true. It's true. I agree with you. And I would venture to say, actually, I'll just say it from my seat, because I don't own a business like you, and I like yours, that I agree. Like, I think that, like, I think that if someone is really serious about it, and believe me, I have empathy for situations and finances and resources. Like, I have been down the road in different ways. But I do feel like it is really important to have guidance in these kinds of situations, because you will get to the destination in a shorter period of time with just somebody who knows what the heck they're doing and can
Yeah.
guide you appropriately versus tinker around and take this advice and that advice and the other from social media. And, and it's not to say that you can't get bits and pieces, but I think that if this has been a struggle for someone for, months to years, that it's important to invest and make it a priority.
I'll say this, and this is going to sound relatively uncomfortable, but I know it to be true.
Please do.
After doing this for 18 years, what people need to understand is that wherever you are right now, and you're worried about the finances of investing in yourself, whether you do or you don't work with somebody, you're paying for it. You're either going to pay for it in time and not being who you want and wasting this precious time on earth, or you're going to pay for it in resources, right? In cash, right? And the thing that bothers me, particularly when we talk about women, is they're such people pleasers. They'll always come up with the money when it comes to taxes, or if they owe a friend, they'll always somehow just find the money when it comes to someone else. Why won't you do it when it comes to yourself? How about take out the little bit of credit, or rearrange your finances a little bit, or how about you pay the bills related to your personal well-being first? How about you do that, get yourself right, and then guess what? The ability to work more, do more, be more, you will end up making more. But since people can't understand that, they always struggle, and they believe this false lie in their mind that they can't due to some other circumstance that they're giving their power away to, when the reality is you're in power. You need to take control, and then all of this can change for you. So I challenge everybody extremely hard, because I'm trying to coach them through a difficult understanding and mindset that really this is a mindset. This is a limiting belief, because you can find a coach out there for $200 a month. And if you can't come up with $200 a month for yourself, then it's a you problem. It's not a resources problem. And that's what I want people to understand. And people may feel victimized by what I just said, but the people who just got liberated from what I'm saying, I'm speaking to you, because I want to deliver you out of this place into a place of your dreams, where you're getting out in front of life instead of always reacting to life.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And I agree with every word. And I think that it does, when it comes to women, I think that oftentimes women put everyone else in front of them. That's like a nurturing thing, and it's a beautiful quality that women have. But I think a lot of women end up finding themselves in the back seat at the end of the day, and they're suffering for a long time.
I'm gonna call BS to half the women who have said that, because what the reason I'm going to say that, this is going to be another one that's psychology in there. 50% of women truly do overcommit themselves to everybody else, not because out of goodwill, but because of people pleasing. And it's a trauma response. And it's not out of connection, it's out of attachment that isn't healthy. And then the other 50% that would say that are hiding behind duties to others instead of taking care of their primary duty, which is to take care of themselves, because they're afraid they're going to fail. So I don't like this premise that I've got all these other responsibilities, so I can't possibly take time for myself. No, you're either running from the thing that you don't want to do, which is your primary responsibility that you're alienating, or you're spending so much time trauma responding to a past of unresolved issues that you can't emotionally find the time for yourself. Either way, it's hurting you, and it's not real.
Yep. I hope that you guys just heard that. And if you didn't, then you need to press rewind and go back. And I think that you sort of took the thought out of my brain, because I was thinking a lot of times when people come up with excuses on the surface, and I know this just from life, it's really because they're hiding from something else. And you can say, well, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. But there's an underlying reason, even if it's subconscious, why you don't want to go. And maybe it's because you're uncomfortably comfortable. Is that even a thing? Like, you're actually you want to change so badly, but what does that mean? what does that mean for, what does that look like? And that is a very uncharted territory. And you might want the thing so bad, but it's weird on the other side and you don't know what that looks like. So it's just easier to stay in your like discontentment because at
Yeah.
least you know what that feels like.
So do you know what other world of medicine that they deal with where people do behaviors that they know would injure themselves, yet they do it because they're compelled to do it? Do you know what field of medicine that is?
Mm.
Addiction.
Ah,
So we are emotionally addicted to our comforts,
yeah.
right? Because it's where we get our comfort. And particularly with women, the primary directive is I need to feel safe. And the comfort drug is dopamine.
Yeah.
Dopamine makes us feel comfortable. This caffeine that I'm drinking right here, I'm not drinking it for the taste. You know what it's selling me? Certainty. Because dopamine is the certainty drug. I have to feel certain. I have to feel comfortable that I am okay and that the world is okay and that I'm not going to have everything taken from me tomorrow and that I'm not alone and that I have resources. And the problem is when I go to change that, my certainty is going to go away.
That's
And
right.
so then I run to whatever makes me comfortable, a codependent relationship, a bonbon, Netflix, whatever the thing is that I run to for my comfort, for my certainty. Because when you take it away, my nervous system gets unregulated. And now I'm afraid. And I will do anything but be afraid or be uncomfortable. And so we live in a world that is emotionally addicted. And so they know they want so desperately, the alcoholic wants so desperately to be better, to do better, to be different. But they can't get away from the thing that brings the ease and comfort that other people do with impunity. Just like for them, other people can eat a bonbon with impunity. Other people can do the things with impunity. But these people, we are emotionally attached because we are socially disconnected.
Yep. And nobody's exempt from this.
No
Absolutely
one.
nobody.
We're
Nobody
on
is.
grayscale.
Yeah.
I'm right there. What do you mean?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you guys, I think that that's a really important thing that I want to say really quick. And I'm going to speak for Vince only because he just said it, is that we're all talking from experience and he's talking from experience. This is not sitting in it from a judgment seat and going, look
No.
at you. I mean, we're all in the same boat and we're all learning the same way. And, we might have different levels of experience and, targeted things that we really focus on, but we're all in it, and we're all experiencing it. And we are all I should say, we've all had traumas. We've all had adaptive responses. We're all living this life and life is lifing, and so I think it's important that, you guys understand that he's speaking from a level of experience and also empathy at the same time.
Yeah. And I think what's important is that actually, I have a nonprofit on the psychology of change. It's called Emotional Freedom Fellowship,
Hmm.
emotionalfreedomfellowship.org. It's a nonprofit, free anybody. It's got meetings, it's got community, it's got a Facebook group where we help to overcome these obsessive, emotional, compulsive behaviors and emotional states. Because what I'm sharing with you is not to berate you. It's just I know the truth. And so if I'm going to be quite honest with you, if everyone ever wanted to really lose weight and keep it off, it would be go there.
Yeah.
If you want something for free,
Yeah.
you would go there. Because if we start with the mind, the body will follow. And then the rest of it's just X's and O's and it's very easy, but we got to get out of our own way. And that's why when you talk about functional medicine, you're talking about root. There could be nothing more root than our emotional addiction because of lack of connection. And so that's the fact. And then the rest of it is the nervous system and then the dysregulation of the body and then the slowing metabolic capacity, which is everything that we have talked today
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I say it often, but it always starts in the mind. It really does. It all starts in the mind and it trickles down from there. I want to segue
I
into,
really hope people if they had no idea what they were stepping into
they
today.
did it. They did it.
They had
Okay.
no idea. They
But
just turned it on. They're like, you know what? I'm driving to work. And then some of them are going to be hitting the dashboard like preach, right?
I
And then
know.
some people are going to be like, this Vince dude is rude. How dare him? He
Well,
doesn't know my life. How dare you, sir?
Let me just say that this platform has always been very open, and I have always wanted you guys to let loose in any and every way possible. Nothing has ever been off the table here, and I prefer it that way. And I think
Yeah.
my listeners know that. So hopefully, most of
Yeah.
them will be appreciative. But if you're triggered, I invite you to sit with that and just kind of just sit with it and be like, okay, why is this triggering me? Because,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's an invitation. It's an invitation.
It's only because I lived it. I suffered
It's,
it, the whole
yeah,
thing. That's why I
yeah,
care about helping people with it. Well, otherwise, why would I be here talking about it if it didn't matter, if the person that's struggling with it didn't matter? You know what I
exactly.
mean? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I want to say, I just want your quick thoughts briefly before we, as we're sort of tying it down just a little bit. I want your statements or your thoughts quickly on age, because there might be some people listening saying, well, like this is really great, but like I am now in my perimenopausal era. And so I feel like because I'm there, this stuff doesn't really matter. Can women see these changes at all ranges? So whether they're
Oh,
25 or 60.
it's an amazing time to be in menopause. And what I mean by that is that our understanding of how it works and the cellular mechanisms that are holding you back and why your metabolism's slowing down, why you're swollen, why everything seems worse. And there's this field of biology called immunometabolism, and that looks at the immune system, because every menopausal female can tell you that they never probably get the cold or flu. They can't remember the last time they got a fever. It's because your immune system starts to upregulate, causing a lot of inflammation because you have no estrogen anymore. That's why you want to be really careful as a female over dieting and simulating menopause, because that's part of what happens. And then you get menopausal symptoms and you wonder why. But it creates, there's cells inside of women. And this is why people are going to debate me on this. But menopausal women, once they need to reset their metabolism, they need to, we go through a program they call the flush. Like if anybody wants to reset their metabolism tomorrow, in 6 to 10 days, I can have you eating 500 more calories, losing weight. Everybody on this, I challenge you to do it. Go to vidalcoaching.com, buy the flush for $75, meet with a coach. If you don't lose weight, we'll give you your money back. How about that? And then you have so we do that already. It could take you through a 2-hour course. You get to meet with our amazing coaches. You don't have to commit to anything heavy. Do 12 days. See if I'm lying. Like, test me. If you've been listening to this, that's one thing you can do. The second thing is getting your hormones optimized through BHRT, like my hormone company, Vital Med, because you want to try to get hormone stability. But the number one thing that women in menopause need to be doing is, after they've gotten themselves a little bit healthier, they need to practice autophagy, which is fasting. And the reason they need to do that is they've got to get rid of these cells in their body that are not processing glucose and are not processing energy very well. And they're going to say that menopausal women shouldn't fast. People don't know what they're talking about, how to apply it correctly. So there's intentional fasting, and then there's just being random and not eating and under eating for really long periods of time. That's not fasting. Fasting has everything to do with, there's water fasting, dry fasting, there is Daniel fasting, there's protein fasting, there's fasting mimicking. There's a million things, and you can learn all about that, at my university, or you can learn about that. But women should be practicing fasting to get rid of those cells, to reset their metabolism, and also reduce the risk of cancer and disease and just all of that stuff. Because once your metabolism slows down in menopause, guess what? Bad cells are building up in your body, and that's why disease can come on earlier, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I had listened to you speak on this in somewhere. I don't remember where it was. And I thought it was an important point to make, because I feel like some people feel like they're restricted because of their age. And, it won't quote unquote work for them because they're in this age range. And that is purely not the case.
Women, your muscle will keep its cellular metabolic rate well up until you're 65 years old. So the idea that it's slowing down because of age is just nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nonsense.
So let's segue into something that I know everybody has an opinion. There is a lot of like extremes, and I really, really want your food for thought in terms of GLP-1, semaglutide, aka you guys, the Ozempics, the Wegovy's. Can you explain this mechanism, the way that this works, in a very, very quick, very quick
Yeah.
amount of time? And
Yeah.
then why are most people using it the wrong way, and why can't it be a tool?
Yeah, it's okay. So semaglutide, but GLPs, your gut makes them. It's an incretin by your gut. That's why your gut has everything to do with your metabolism. So I've been saying it for 12 years. Nobody believed me. Well, you're believing me now because it releases from your gut and then releases insulin to process glucose, right? So the problem is that our gut gets off. And our body gets less of hormone sensitive, and if you're a chronic dieter, you're not releasing enough insulin when you eat, so then your glucose stays high, you stay in a sugar burning state, so you don't go into metabolizing fat, and that creates oxidative stress that slows your metabolism down, so your metabolic capacity drops. I want people to understand this, right? Keep coming back to these same themes so they can understand the behavior of how things actually work. And so GLP, then what it does is it stimulates your beta cells in your pancreas to release insulin. Now, there are other GLPs. You've got a tirzepatide and retatrutide. Those have GIPs in them that lower glucagon. Glucagon is what it does is it stimulates your glycogen to convert into glucose, right? So basically, glucagon will make you release more sugar in the blood, and insulin will make you pull more sugar out of the blood. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So, right. So semaglutide is just an insulin. So it will make you shuttle all of those nutrients into the cell. That's why if insulin made you gain weight, then semaglutide would be a problem.
Right.
Right. So let's just end that. People are demonizing insulin and stuff. They just don't have wisdom. They have knowledge. You know, my favorite quote on knowledge versus wisdom, and a lot of people can sit here and tell you stuff, but they don't actually do the thing. So they don't really know. But this is one of my favorite ones. So knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. Right? So I can tell you about tomatoes all day, but if I don't actually use tomatoes, I wouldn't know that to not put it in a fruit salad, right?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So it's the same thing. Fruit cake, right? Knowledgeable, fruit's good, cake's good, but wisdom is fruit cake is going to be terrible.
Right.
Right? Two rights don't make a writer.
They don't.
So anyway, so the reason I say that is so semaglutide, though, is also a natural anti-inflammatory because what it does is by pulling down oxidative stress, by pulling glucose into the cell really fast and it not parked in your blood vessels, it lowers all oxidative stress, which then calms the immune system down. That's why autoimmune disorders, all kinds of conditions, you can microdose it and it be a longevity tool. It also will clean out excess glucose in the liver, so you're not building up fat stores in the liver. And it's just an amazing tool when supervised by an appropriate physician or coach that is also having you resistance train, eat enough protein. So you want to, people that don't have a lot of disease, what they need to be doing is eating about 0.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. They can get their calories down if they want. They need to at least eat carbs twice a week, and they need to make sure that their calories go 30% above their average at least once a week so that they don't get adaptive thermogenesis. Okay. But the protein, make sure to maintain protein synthesis and nitrogen balance in the body so you don't have muscle loss. And they need to resistance train 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Okay. If you do that and you use semaglutide in smaller doses, you can have incredible results that also will stay with you when you come off. If you don't do those things and you just stay a stressed out mess and you keep increasing your semaglutide or you move into tirzepatide or retatrutide, you're going to muscle waste more and become dependent on the drug, which is what the drug companies want, because then they're going to sell you other drugs to help you with your muscle and everything else. So they make all the money and now you're trapped with a new monthly payment. So congratulations to you. Now you got hair, nails, semaglutide, whatever else you got going on that you got to figure out how to pay for. So now you can't afford the coach.
I love that you just said that because I think that's what's mostly happening because it's like 70 to 80% of people are probably taking the wrong dose and they're probably not under the care of someone who's like really knows what they're doing. And now they're trapped in a system. And that's why pharma is making billions of dollars because they don't care really about how and what you're doing. They just care about selling the drug.
Literally at my medical clinic, vidalmed.com, VIDAL med.com, we have semaglutide coaching where we'll give you semaglutide at a really low cost, but you get it with the coaching for a couple sessions to make sure. Listen, it's like the whole argument. It's like, if I give people more condoms, they'll have more sex. No, you'll have less babies. Okay. People are going to have just as much sex. So it's like, we know that you're going to take semaglutide. Okay. So if you're going to take it with supervision so you get the medicinal benefit from it. And then you work through any of the lifestyle problems that you have, psychological problems that you have around dieting or whatever. And then when you come off the semaglutide, you are prepared for life on life's terms. It would be the same thing I would say to somebody with a mood disorder. If you're going to take an SSRI, you better get the therapy. You're going to take the anti-anxiety, you better get the therapy. Taking semaglutide without coaching is a very unwise decision.
Well said. Yeah. Okay. You know what, you guys, I'm gonna, well, I'll ask you in a second, but I'm gonna put all of this in the show notes too. I know we have to kind of land the plane here. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we sign off? And also, where can people find more about you if they want to learn more? Give us just a quick rundown.
Yeah, I think it's important. If you are someone who just wants this information for yourself, check out Vidal, Vidal coaching.com, or my Instagram, Vince_Pitstick. It's an Australian deodorant, pit and stick. You can't mess it up. And you'll start the journey of understanding what I'm saying. If you're someone who really wants to own the material and know it for yourself, you can buy courses and education and certification at my university, Metabolic Mentor University.com. Anyone can learn this. You can go from off the couch to fully understanding this in a 12-week process, no problem. Okay. In the inner room, if you want to understand more, again, go to my Instagram or go to my YouTube, Metabolic Mentor.
Perfect. You guys, I encourage you to follow Vince on Instagram. He's got a lot of resources. He talks a lot. He does a lot of videos. I follow him. Really just a wealth of knowledge. And again, I will put all of this information in the show notes for you. Please reach out if you have a hard time finding something, and I will do my best to point you in the right direction. I feel like we could have gone like 3 to 4 more hours. So I might have to have you back.
I'm happy to come back.
I was going to say, I will probably be knocking on your door in the future so we can have an additional conversation.
100%.
Until then, it has really been a pleasure. You've given us a lot to chew on. So I thoroughly appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, Vince. A real pleasure. All right, my friends, we will see you on the next episode. Until then, have a very blessed day, and I will talk to you guys later.